Hello everyone, I am ChessChuck. I'm glad to see you here. Let me ask you a question. How many of you have difficulties coming up with good moves, especially in complex positions? You can get overwhelmed when you have a lot of pieces to move, and your opponent has a bunch of attackers threatening you. In this lesson, I will share my secret method on how to think and make the best decisions in any position to become a great player. I have condensed over 45 years of teaching experience into a 10-minute lesson. All you have to do is follow it, so here we go. Introducing ChessChuck's triangle, an analytical approach that consists of 3 rules. Rule number 1, capture or be captured. Rule number 2, piece development. And rule number 3, attack your opponent's pieces. Alrighty then. Let's dive into the exciting world of analyzing captures by looking at the following game. White opened the game with the move e4, to which Black responded with e5. Then, White moved their bishop to c4, and Black responded by moving their bishop to c5. Here, the White queen moved out to h5 to attack 3 pawns, e5, f7, and h7. Looking at all the captures, Black needs to realize that the h7 pawn is well protected by the rook. The f7 pawn, even though it is defended by the king, it is also attacked by the laser-pointed bishop on c4. And if Black is not careful, he can get checkmated on the f7 square. And of course, the e5 pawn is completely unprotected. Therefore, Black needs to simply move the queen to e7, protecting both pawns, and then threatening knight to f6 to get rid of the annoying white queen. Now let's take a look at another interesting example. Playing with white pieces, my young chess student got into an opening that he didn't know well. At the beginning of the game, he tried to get some of his pieces out, but after his opponent played knight to d4 on move number 7, the youngster was facing some challenges. Remembering that capture or be captured is the golden rule, he quickly realized that his opponent was threatening to capture his queen and the knight. But he also realized that by capturing the e5 pawn with his queen, he will put his opponent in check and force the queen trade. So without thinking too long, White captured the e5 pawn. And after the queen trade, he was put in checkmate after knight moved to c2. What a terrible way to lose. All he had to do was to look at all captures and realize that both the pawn on c2 and a king in the center needed protection, so he should have simply moved his queen back on d1 and probably have a slightly worse position, but nothing compared to what happened. Remember, take your time and think, and examine all captures, especially in a complicated position. Now for the next game. Here the game quickly developed into a Danish Gambit, an opening I often teach to my beginner students to help them understand the basics of chess. Most people would probably say that the best move here is to bring the knight into battle by playing knight to f3. However, the best move happens to be bishop move to f7, capturing the pawn and denying Black's king a chance to castle. After the Black king captures back the bishop, White simply plays queen to d5, check, winning back the bishop and getting a fantastic position right out of the opening. The rule capture, or be captured, is so important that even players in the World Championship match sometimes forget about it. Let's analyze the game played in 2014 between Magnus Carlsen and Vishy Anand. The 2 players traded queens early in the Sicilian defense and started jabbing and maneuvering like 2 boxers in a complicated middle game. Though Carlsen had a very slight advantage, both fighters had their gloves up, protecting all their pieces. But on move number 26, the world champion moved his king on d2, thus letting his guard down. At that precise moment, Vishy Anand could have landed a huge blow to Carlsen by capturing the seemingly protected e5 pawn with his knight. When Carlsen protected his e5 pawn with his rook on move 21, Vishy must have considered the move knight take pawn on e5 during the past 5 moves, but of course that would have simply lost his knight. And yet, had he considered the most important rule in chess, capture or can I be captured, he would have immediately captured the e5 pawn with his knight. This is a fantastic move because Black has an incredible Zwischenzug. White rook on g4 is unprotected, so Carlsen would have captured the rook on g8. But instead of capturing back the white rook, Vishy would play knight c4, check, and would have likely won the game. This is the point of this combination. Knight taking pawn on c4 is a Zwischenzug, or a German chess tactic that involves making an unexpected move that poses a threat, requiring the opponent to respond immediately. This move is also known as an in-between move, intermezzo, or intermediate move. Regardless of how you pronounce it, both players forgot to analyze the knight capture. Had Anand found the simple combination, he could have regained his world championship title. Here is another example, when both world-class players forgot the capture or be captured rule. The game between the world's two highest-rated players in 2012 between Magnus Carlsen and Levon Aronian. On move 27, Carlsen played his bishop to f4, a losing move. Aronian should have considered rook captures the bishop on f4, simply winning the bishop, since taking the rook gives black a forced mate. However, Aronian, who was under time pressure during the game, played a seemingly good move bishop to c3 instead of capturing the bishop. He completely did not analyze a piece capture. What a terrible way not to win the game, almost embarrassing. And the following is the wildest example, demonstrating that you have to consider all captures. In this position, white appears to be hopelessly lost, down a rook and a pawn. However, had white considered a queen capture the h7 pawn, and white all of a sudden wins the game. After the black king captures the queen, white plays rook to h1, check. And when the king moves back to g8, white puts his knight on g6, ultimately achieving a checkmate with rook to h8 in the subsequent move. Black king is unable to escape, even though black's material advantage is overwhelming. Many people would have probably resigned in this position as white, since there is not much of a chance to attack the king any other way, as black's knight is threatening to jump to f6 and protect the king from all threats. One more aspect of capture or be captured rule. I strongly suggest to my beginner followers to put your pieces on protected squares. Pawns are usually the best defenders. This will also ensure that your opponent will not be able to accidentally capture them. Now that you understand the importance of analyzing all captures for yourself, as well as for your opponent, the second most important point to consider is piece development. Remember, when you are playing chess, you are a ninja battling another ninja in a life-or-death battle. When preparing for a fight, what must you take to the battle? Of course, you need to have a full arsenal of weapons. Without your weapons, the other ninja will simply overwhelm you. Let's examine a Greco Gambit, commonly taught to beginners. White gives up a pawn to quickly develop its pieces and castle the king into safety, while the general in charge of the black army uses his bishop to attack white pieces, forgetting about his other pieces and leaving the king in the middle of the board. Sadly, by move 10, when the black bishop captures the white rook, white pieces swarm all over black's king like hyenas attacking a little sheep, and the game is quickly over. This brings me to the next very important point about piece development. The most important development move is castling your king, making sure that it is safe. You don't want your king roaming around the center of the board, while your opponent has all his pieces ready to pounce on your king. Also remember that when developing your pieces, try not to move the same piece more than one time in the opening. You need to use your moves wisely and develop as many pieces as possible. Finally, controlling the center is of vital importance in the beginning of the game. Try to develop your pieces in such a way that you are controlling the center of the board. This gives you the ability to shift your pieces to attack on either side of the board, as well as the center. And now for the third and last rule. It is the one that beginners love the most, and oftentimes forget the first two, much more important ones. In general, if you have a chance to attack your opponent's pieces, you should do so, but not at the expense of capture or development. If you can develop your piece and simultaneously attack your opponent, that is usually a great idea. But you don't want to attack your opponent with just one piece. The best type of attack is the one that utilizes many pieces. To demonstrate how these three rules work together, I will show you my game that was played almost 40 years ago. I played black against a very strong master, and the game quickly developed into a Slav defense, where both players try to quickly develop and control the center of the board. After I executed the book move of pawn capture pawn on c4, my opponent countered with pawn to a4. This strategic maneuver aimed to prevent me from defending the additional pawn on c4 using my b-pawn. The game continued with black's piece development, but white used its knight to jump to e5 and c4, making 3 moves with the knight in the opening to get the pawn back. It was better to probably move the e-pawn up and capture the c4 pawn with the bishop. I felt that I had a slight advantage, and tried to attack the center pawn by moving my pawn up to c5, hoping to develop my knight on c6. Instead of capturing my pawn back, remember the capture or be captured rule, white decided to develop the bishop to f4 and try to launch an attack. This was a major mistake. White should have realized that his own king was stuck in the center of the board. Before attacking, you should make sure that your pieces are developed. At that point, I smelled blood. White's king is not castled, and the dark squared diagonal was open for my bishop to attack him. I moved my knight on e4, and even though it was not the best move, it scared my opponent. After queen captured d4 pawn, I developed my bishop to b4 check, simultaneously attacking the king. Develop an attack combination is just as dangerous to your opponent. As a 1-2 punch to a boxer, my opponent was forced to move the knight back to d2. This was the 4th move that knight made in the opening. The final blow was knight to c6 move. Again, develop attack punch. With the pinned knight on d2, queen under attack, and the king in the middle of the board, my opponent traded queens, as he tried to simplify the position. However, after making a few more moves, he realized that his pieces were not developed and his knight was trapped on the other side of the board, with no chance to get out. Therefore, my opponent resigned. Hope you enjoyed this game. And finally, but very importantly, before moving any piece, you must think for at least 20 seconds to follow the ChessChuck triangle. Armed with this methodology, also known as the capture, develop, attack, and as long as you take your time before moving, you are certain to reach a high level. Good luck in your future battles. Hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you have any questions, please let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to give us a like and click subscribe. See you next time.